Patrick Gorman, Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister. Today, it's finally here. It's both the final sitting day of the 47th Parliament for Australia, but it's also one of the biggest days in Peter Dutton's political life. It is his chance to show his costings and how he's going to pay for his incredibly expensive plans. We've, of course, as the Albanese Labor government, have been here this week investing in Australia's future, building Australia's future, and we got something big done. We introduced legislation to cut taxes for every Australian taxpayer. We put it into the Parliament yesterday. Labor voted for it. The Liberals and Nationals voted against it. But despite their opposition, we got it done. And that's because we want Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. And what we've seen today from Mr. Dutton in the newspapers is that the only plan he has is to go back into the fridge for Scott Morrison's leftovers. His leftover ideas when it comes to temporary relief, where at the same time, he's been in this Parliament this week voting against permanent tax relief, opposing permanent tax relief for the Australian people. Now, if it all feels a bit too familiar when it comes to the Liberal Party rushing towards temporary relief and Labor committing to permanent assistance, feels a lot like the last election. What we had at the last federal election, you'll remember, was you had Labor saying we would absolutely back a $1 an hour increase in the minimum wage for working people. And the Liberal Party opposed it. They said that working Australians didn't deserve a $1 an hour increase in the minimum wage. And now, here we are, 3 years later. And yet again, the Liberal Party are dipping into their pockets, trying to rip money out from working people. But this time, it's a lot more. $50. That's how much Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor want to rip out of the pockets of taxpayers. They said this morning they would absolutely repeal. Angus Taylor said very clearly he would absolutely repeal Labor's tax agenda, Labor's tax cuts. That's $50 a week that they want to rip out of the pockets of mums and dads across Australia. Now, Labor knows why they want to do that. It's very clear. The reason they want to rip this money out of the pockets of working people who've helped in the fight against inflation, helped as we build Australia up for the challenges we have ahead, the reason they want to rip that money out is really clear. It's because they have a $600 billion plan that they haven't told us how they're going to pay for it. Last year, Peter Dutton stood in the House of Representatives and committed himself to his nuclear plan. $600 billion. And we haven't seen a single costing on how they're going to pay for it. But we're starting to see. We're starting to see they're going to start by taking away all of Labor's tax cuts, $50 a week, out of the pockets of working people. They're going to rip that $50 a week out of the pockets of working people to cover the costs of their nuclear plan. They're then going to go for Medicare. We know that they've said they oppose the Medicare urgent care clinics. That's another saving. They've said they're going to come for the public service, those hard-working public servants who help people get their pensions, their veterans claims and their Medicare claims, rip 42,000 public servants out of the public service. But still, the numbers don't add up. So the test for Peter Dutton tonight, as he stands in the House of Representatives at 7:30 p.m, is to say how he will pay for his nuclear reactor plan and be upfront with the Australian people. That's the least that people deserve on the eve of an election.
One of the things you brought up, and I understand why you've done so, is the tax cut that formed the budget. Given that it's been characterised as a bit, why wasn't it brought forward a year to be effective from 1 July 2025 to get that $5 a week tax cut in people's pockets sooner?
So the immediate cost of living relief we have from 1 July 2025 for the people of Australia is, of course, our energy bill relief. That's an extra $150 for every household to help with their energy bills. That's what we've prioritised coming into the next financial year. But these top-up tax cuts really build on the bigger story. That's a bigger story where we have been arguing time and time again for tax cuts for low and middle income earners, at the same time as doing other things that help people with their cost of living. This budget also has that significant investment, $8.5 billion in making sure that more Australians can get into a bulk billing clinic, so that 9 out of 10 GP visits are bulk billed. I know for families in my electorate, you know, 2 adults, 2 kids, it's going to save them between $360 and $400 a year. That's a significant saving as we start to make sure that we turn the corner on Medicare and get Medicare back to where it should be, which is a bulk billing service. It means it's your health, it's your Medicare card, not your credit card. It gives you the support you need when you need to see a GP.
It's nice of you to go off the road. There's nothing stopping you as a government from also implementing $5 a week tax cut as that one
But look, we've been really open about the decisions that we've made and why we've made those decisions. Really open about why we want to put it in from, for 2 years of tax cuts. That's it. A bit at a time. We've been really cautious as we've gone through these choppy economic waters, caused in large part by things happening on the international stage. We wanted to win the fight against inflation rather than push inflation up. We found that this was the best way forward when it comes to implementing those tax cuts. And now, people have seen our plan and they can make their own judgments on it, but it's a really clear choice. You get tax cuts, they survive under Labor. Those tax cuts get chopped if you vote for Peter Dutton.
You've also handled the public service. The opposition has, over the past 3 or 4 months, spoken a lot about growth in the public service. Does it surprise you they haven't yet talked more frankly about how they might assess any redundant capacity that they allege is in the public service today?
I visit public service work sites across Australia, Launceston, Brisbane, Geraldton, all over this great state, all over this great country. Our public servants work hard. Everyone in the public service is there to serve the public. And the sorts of investments we've made in the public service have been to deal with problems that have been facing the Australian people. When we've had 42,000 backlog of Veterans Affairs claims, we've had people waiting up to a month to get their paid parental leave payments. And so I think it is time for the coalition to outline exactly what jobs will go, where will they be. We think it's some 20% of the public service they're going to chop. They've gone from 36,000 they said they were going to sack. They're now saying 42,000 will be on the chopping block. My calculation is that 20% reduction of the public service in Western Australia, where I'm from, is 1,700 jobs. 1,700 jobs is equivalent to closing 2 iron ore mines in Western Australia. It will have a huge economic impact. And that's why I do think it's reasonable to expect a little bit more detail on where all of these savings are going to come from to cover this $600 billion nuclear plan. Thank you.
Can I get you to hold that $50?
Of course you can. This is the $50 that Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor want to rip out of the pockets of working Australians. They want to rip $50 away, rip away all of that tax relief that people have earned. These are tax cuts that the Australian people have been promised, they've earned, and now, on the final sitting day of the 47th Parliament, we're learning that Peter Dutton is going to rip away $50 from the working people of Australia.